Okay, I think I'll start. You're all very welcome. My name is Juliette Hussey and I'm the head of physiotherapy in Trinity. And what I'm going to do in this talk is explain to you where physiotherapists work after completing the degree and what the degree, the four-year degree here involves. And then I'm very happy to take any questions. There are two students down at the stand in the front hall. They're final year students, so it might be very useful to talk to them as well about their experiences of the course, because obviously they're still currently on the programme. I suppose, and I was just thinking, one thing I probably didn't say in the last talk is, you know, I think people think they know what most people know what physiotherapy is, but really, I suppose if you were to define it is the physical rehabilitation and the physical management of people who have injury or disease, but is also involved in sort of the prevention of other diseases through adopting healthy lifestyles, and I think that's important just to state. Physiotherapy is involved in a wide range of areas, and I'm just going to cover some of them. But in terms of career prospects and areas where people go on to work, it really is a very, very wide and open area and differs around the world. So I think that's something to sort of bear in mind. Sometimes people come in very much with an idea of what it's going to entail, particularly around sports medicine. And what I want to do is really to show you it's much, much wider than that, even though at the end of the day people may go on and specialise in specific areas. So in terms of where people work after completion of the BSc, because I know that's something that people obviously are very interested in, and this is wide-ranging, but I suppose within the health sector in Ireland, it's primarily within the hospital sector or in the primary care sector. That is changing at the moment because there's much more of an emphasis of developing programs in primary care, and so a lot of the services that were traditionally delivered in hospital settings are moving into primary care settings. And what this means for the profession is that people probably have to be much more generalist rather than specialist, because they could have a workload that involves older people, babies, you know, maternity care. So they have to be much more generalist than working in primary care than probably in a hospital where you can have specialist areas because you've got a very large team. So I suppose some of the areas that physiotherapists will work in are here, and I'll just briefly explain those. And these would also be the areas that students would have time on their clinical placement during the course. They would spend time in these areas. So in hospital departments, either with inpatients or with outpatients, and that'll spread through a wide range of musculoskeletal, respiratory, neurological, post-surgery. All of these patients may have physiotherapy needs and will be treated as part of their hospital care by physiotherapists. Then there are other rehabilitation units like the National Rehabilitation Hospital, stroke units, where rehabilitation is really the main focus of treatment for a patient. And usually that's a patient who's gone through maybe the acute phase of their treatment and at a stage where they're really actively involved in very intensive rehabilitation. And in those areas, physiotherapists will often really drive those kind of services because the main reason for the patient being there will be physical rehabilitation. Physiotherapists work in intensive care units, coronary care units, where they're one part of a very large team of people involved in the management of a patient. Areas such as orthopedics, and that could be after elective surgery like hip replacement, knee replacement. There will be a huge emphasis on physiotherapy both before the operation and after the operation. Pulmonary rehabilitation, the management of people who've got lung disease and who need exercise to improve their performance so that they can maintain their normal lifestyle. And that's an area, relatively new area in this part of in this country, and it's been extended out throughout the country. Burns units, this is very specialised. And students do have an opportunity to go into specialised units in Ireland, that's a small part, if you like, of their overall experience. Primary care and care in the community. Traditionally, in the past, physiotherapists would have often worked in very small community centres or in patients' homes, delivering treatment. But now, with the primary care strategy and the advent of quite big primary care centres, a lot of, as I said, what was done in hospitals is moving into primary care centres, and physiotherapists are an integral part of the primary care teams in those units. So that's a very broad idea within the health sector of where people work. Obviously, there's also private practice, sports medicine, specialist units like paediatric units, which in some way come under primary care and care in the community, but they are quite specialised areas, and often people will have done postgraduate extra specialisation before working in those areas. So, in terms of, as I say, what I presented there was the health sector in Ireland, but a lot of our graduates travel. They travel both within Europe and internationally. A small number go on every year to postgraduate study, to masters and PhDs. I'd say out of a class of 40, we would have about 3 or 4 that would come straight to do PhDs in Trinity, and the same number again, if not more, that might go to other universities in Ireland or overseas. Industry, the whole area of workplace assessment and prevention of overuse injury in workplace is another area, growing area for physiotherapists who work in that area of occupational health. And I'd say a number will work and go on to develop either their own private practices or to work in private practice and in schools for children with special needs. So the course in physiotherapy is a 4-year course. And at the end of that course, there's a professional qualification so that graduates can work, that can become members of the Irish Society of Chartered Physiotherapists and can work in the health sector. I suppose basically the 4-year course is divided into the first 2 years, which addresses really the basic sciences and an introductory to physiotherapy skills. And then the second 2 years that is focused on clinical sciences, clinical placements, and a research project. So in first year, the students spend most of the time actually either in this building or on the main campus, and only spend a very small amount of time in St. James's, which is the Trinity Centre in St. James's, is where there's another, if you like, part of the medical school. And the subjects that students learn: anatomy, clinical anatomy, physiology, chemistry, and physics. Anatomy and physiology are very large courses. They're studied, as I say here, with lots of the medical students and other students in health sciences. And I think sometimes students, when they come into physiotherapy, they feel, oh, well, when am I actually going to be doing any physiotherapy? There won't be really any in first year. It really is important to come to grips with the basic sciences before moving into some clinical placement. Other courses are different. They offer placement very early on. But as I say, it's just something to make you aware of in terms of the course here. It's not until second year that students actually have their first exposure to clinical practice. In second year, students do a small amount of anatomy. They do neuroanatomy, but they also start on physiotherapy skills and the basic clinical sciences around physiotherapy. So learn what, in terms of what physiotherapy is, how it's applied to clinical populations. And at the end of that year, the students have their first clinical placement in a hospital or a primary care setting. In the third year, students, this really is focused on the clinical sciences and on clinical placements. And so the subjects of study are bone and joint disease, chronic disease management, pediatrics, learning disability, psychology, and the students start they're introduced to research methods and statistics. And that's all done in the first term of third year, and in the second term of third year, students are out on clinical placement for the whole of the term. The clinical placements happen across a wide variety of sites. Now, we've got 2 main teaching hospitals, Tala and St James's. So at any point in time, we'd have a large number of students in one or other of those sites. But we also have students on placements in primary care, in obstetrics, in paediatrics, in rehabilitation. And in each of our sites, we have clinical tutors who help, who supervise the students, and they're involved in their teaching, but the students actually work alongside with a senior physiotherapist in the specialist area. So a huge amount of the learning that happens in clinical placement, and it's very, very well supported. And as I say, the second half of third year is spent on clinical placement, as is the first half of fourth year. So students really spend almost a full year on clinical. There's a small amount of them coming back into the college, but the focus really is on developing their clinical skills. So clinical placements, they're either 4 or 5 weeks duration in hospitals, in physiotherapy departments, in hospitals, in primary care and community care. I'll just come back to the elective placement. There's 6 to 7 placements over the years, and as I say, they're supervised by clinical tutors on site. And we've got very good links with our main teaching hospitals and other specialist centres. So even though students will be on placement for a long period of time, there's very close engagement with the physiotherapy department in St James's. Between third year and fourth year, students can do an elective placement, and the purpose of that placement is, that they try and experience something a little bit outside the core placements that they have to do as part of the course here. And a number of our students go overseas, it's a great opportunity to have that experience. And in fact, one of the students downstairs was in Vietnam last summer at a clinical placement. We have students who go to Zambia, to the States, to Australia, to India, to a variety of areas overseas. And it's something that certainly I strongly encourage, because I think the students gain a huge amount. And even from having had a small number of placements before they go on the elective placement, there's so much that they can both teach and obviously learn when they are overseas. We also have a small Erasmus program. We have an Erasmus exchange with 2 sites, one in Sweden and one in Norway, but that's actually in the fourth year. And a small number of students have an option to go to one or other of those sites for 1 term, the first term in fourth year. So the fourth year starts with spending the first term on clinical placement, and then the second term the students are back with us doing a research project, doing modules in sports and exercise medicine, professional issues, ergonomics, and a specialist option area. And at that stage they've completed all their clinical placements, they've had their final clinical exam, and it really gives them an opportunity to develop then the more specialist areas of interest and also their research skills. All of the students do a research project in their final year, and that's something that all students in any Trinity degree, that's something that is very important as part of a Trinity degree. And our students do some independent research. Now, that's primarily done in our laboratories rather than in the clinical sites, because they have a very short time to do that. But it doesn't allow them to develop good laboratory skills. I mean, this is an example of measuring somebody's knee strength. And I'm sure, just looking around, I'm sure there's some people in the audience who've had knee injuries where they've had to rehabilitate the quadriceps or the hamstring muscles. And this is an example of a dynamometer. It's a machine that measures muscle strength. And you want to see in this subject that the strength of the muscles in the front of the knee and the back of the knee, and look at the relationship of those. Because if you have an unequal muscle strength between the muscles at the front and the back, you're going to be more predisposed to injury. And so that's all very important as part of the overall management of seeing that a patient is ready to go back to sport or ready to go back to whatever they were doing before they had either the injury or surgery or whatever the case may be. We've other students who measure aerobic capacity, which is measuring like your maximum fitness. And all of these are very important techniques to learn as a student, and then to be able to apply into clinical populations once people are qualified. We also have a number of students, let's say, who stay on to do postgraduate work and to do MScs or PhDs with us. And some of that work would be done in the laboratory, and a lot of that work would be done in the clinical sites that we're attached to. So on qualification, the graduates can become a member of the Irish Society of Chartered Physiotherapists, which allows them then to practice within which they need eligibility of that to practice within the healthcare system here. The Irish Society of Chartered Physiotherapists is a member of a worldwide body, the World Congress of Physical Therapy, and there's 5 regions of the World Congress of Physical Therapy around the world. What it is it's a degree that's very mobile, transportable across the world because of this global organisation. And a number of our graduates go overseas to work. I mean, we've always had graduates who were interested in travel. I suppose in the last number of years, because there has been less opportunities due to the economic situation here, that probably more of them have travelled even earlier than that they may have. But I think that's probably changing. There seems to be a much more opening up of positions within the health service here now. But the degree and the professional qualification it leads to does allow graduates to travel worldwide and to practice worldwide. That's just the worldwide website. Do come to the website, if you want to have further details. Don't hesitate to, you can contact me or any of the department directly if you have questions. Do talk to the students downstairs. One thing I would recommend is, if you are interested in physiotherapy, that you do know enough about it and about the broad spread of it, rather than just the idea that maybe of, an outpatient or sports, something that you've had experience with. Have many of you had experience, like in transition year? How many hands up who's gone to see physiotherapy? So there's quite an amount have had some exposure, and that helps you understand, is this the course for me? Is this something I can see myself doing down the line? So that is important. Saying that, lots of people come in and they don't have that, and they get on. They learn that as part of the course. It is a science degree. It's a broad science degree. So that's something that even if people don't continue to practice and want to go on to do postgraduate, it allows them to have the stepping stone to that. Are there any questions? No? Anything? Sometimes somebody's question is a question that lots of other people wanted to ask, so anything that people, any confusion about? Has that made it, is it giving you an idea? Is it clearer in terms of what the course entails? It's obviously important to do a course that you like and to know what the course entails, but it's also very important in terms of the final outcome, in terms of what you're going to do with it later on. And that's why, it's important to consider both of those when you're choosing, when you're putting that rank in on your CAO form. Yes?
What kind of points did you be looking at?
Last year it was 550, so it sort of hovers around that. It was around, I think it went down to about 510 or something, but then with the bonus points for maths 2 years ago, then that came up. So it's around that.
Is there only 40 days?
Yes, we've an intake of 40 per year.
So it's 50 people qualified.
It drives the points go up because it's the supply and demand. So if you like, it's the highest number and that's what shifts the points up and down. Anything else? Yes? So can I? For the Erasmus, well, the way we select is we ask people expressions of interest so students who would be interested in the 3rd year for applying to go in the 4th year. We invite expressions of interest. And then we look at a number of things. We look at their performance in their examinations and their performance in their clinical to date. And that usually helps us decide. But because we've only 40, we don't, and it's not everybody that's applying for Erasmus. Usually if people are interested, they have a very good opportunity, a good chance of getting selected. Anything else? No? Well, do go down and talk to I say there's 2 final year students who are just coming to the end of their clinical placements, and then they'll come back in for their final term. So it's probably very good to speak to them, and they'll be able to give you an insight into what the course at the moment is like. Okay.